When we think about wars, we usually remember the big, famous victories. But sometimes the real stories, the most gripping ones, are found in the victories that almost didn't happen, the ones that were snatched right from the jaws of total failure. Well, this is one of those stories. We're diving into the last desperate days of the 1971 Indo-Pakistani War, and a single daring operation that changed absolutely everything.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1971. The goal is Dacca. The Indian Army is moving like lightning across what was then East Pakistan. But then, all of a sudden, the entire war effort just stops, grinds to a halt. And it's not because of an enemy army, it's because of a river.
So that's the million-dollar question facing the Indian commanders. How do you get past this? And the answer wasn't just about winning a battle. I mean, the fate of millions of people and the birth of a brand new nation, Bangladesh, was literally hanging in the balance.
And you really have to understand the scale of this problem. The Meghna isn't just a river. It's a monster, a colossal, sprawling waterway that acts like a natural fortress. The 57th Mountain Division had been on this unstoppable roll, and now, with their final objective almost in sight, they were stuck, completely and utterly blocked.
And here's why. In a last-ditch but super effective move, the Pakistani forces had blown the only bridge. The one conventional way across was just gone. Can you imagine the feeling in that command tent? All that momentum, the entire war effort, just vanished in an instant. The whole campaign, which was codenamed Operation Cactus Lily, was right on the verge of totally falling apart.
But to really get the frantic urgency, to understand why crossing that river was so critical, we have to pull the lens back from the battlefield. Because this wasn't just a war for territory. No, this was a race against time to stop an absolute horror.
See, this whole thing kicked off because of the Pakistani army's brutal crackdown on the Bengali people of East Pakistan. And this wasn't just crowd control. It was a systematic campaign of terror, of mass murder. So the Indian army wasn't just an invading force. They were responding to a humanitarian catastrophe that was unfolding right on their border.
And if you want to understand the mindset behind this, just listen to these words. These are the chilling words of the man in charge of the Pakistani forces, Lieutenant General Niazi. And he wasn't whispering this in secret, he said it out loud to his officers. That's not the language of a soldier. That's the language of an executioner, and it tells you everything you need to know about the horror being unleashed.
And then, on the other side, you have this man, Lieutenant General J.F.R. Jacob, Jake, to his friends. As the Chief of Staff for India's Eastern Command, he was the architect of the whole advance. The guy was known for his razor-sharp mind and strategic genius. And now, he was staring down the single biggest challenge of the entire campaign.
And the result of all this brutality? A human tidal wave. Millions of terrified civilians fled across the border into India. It created one of the biggest refugee crises of the 20th century. This wasn't some far-off problem for India. It was happening right there on its doorstep.
But even in the middle of all this horror, you find these incredible acts of compassion. In one village, Ampati, as landowners were getting nervous about the huge influx of people, one woman, Rashan Ara Begum Sangma, she stood up. She offered her own land, her own food to 45,000 refugees. She even made her son eat with the refugee children to teach him a lesson in compassion he'd never forget. And that little boy, he grew up to become the chief minister of Meghalaya. It's just a powerful reminder that history isn't only shaped by generals, but by individual acts of pure kindness.
Just look at this number for a second. It's just a number on a screen, right? Cold, abstract. But behind this number is a story of almost unimaginable terror.
That number, that's how many people, men, women, and children, were slaughtered at a place called Jathibanga. This wasn't a battle. They were just civilians from a dozen different villages, mostly Hindus trying to walk to the Indian border. They camped for the night, were surrounded, and then just systematically machine-gunned. The river they camped by ran red with their blood. This is why the Indian army was in such a hurry. Every single day of delay meant more massacres, just like this one.
And the cruelty, it was personal, it was intimate. This is what happened to Omar Farooq, a student leader. His crime? He was the first person in his town to raise the flag of an independent Bangladesh. The Pakistani army made an example of him. This kind of barbarism wasn't just random violence, it was designed to break the very spirit of a people who were fighting for their freedom.
So, with the full weight of that horror in the background, let's go back to the banks of the Meghna River. That destroyed bridge, it's not just a military obstacle anymore.
It's a barrier that is prolonging all this suffering. And with the clock ticking, a truly wild, audacious idea started to take shape.
Lieutenant General Sagat Singh, the Corps commander right there on the ground, he just refused to accept defeat. His thinking was, if we can't go over the river, we'll fly over it. He ordered the planning of a massive helicopter airlift. This was something the Indian Army had never, ever attempted on this scale before. It was a huge, huge gamble.
Okay, so the plan itself was just genius in its audacity. It was this incredible multi-pronged assault. First, helicopters would literally leapfrog an entire battalion, the 4 Guards, deep behind enemy lines. At the same time, another unit, 19 Punjab, would sneak across the river in the dead of night using commandeered fishing boats. Their combined mission? Grab a critical railway bridge before the Pakistanis could blow it up, trap the enemy, and carve a wide-open path straight to Dacca.
And the speed of this thing was just stunning. Look at this. December 9th, first choppers land. December 10th, the bridge is captured. December 11th, reinforcements are pouring in. And by the 12th, we're talking just 3 days after being stopped cold, an entire Indian brigade was across the river with their big guns in range of the capital, Dacca. It was breathtakingly fast.
This was the checkmate move. The Pakistani commanders were completely stunned. They were all set for a big fight at the river, not for an entire Indian brigade to just magically appear in their backyard. The impossible river had been crossed, and the road to Dacca was now wide open.
The success of this heli bridge kicked off the final act of the war. With Indian troops closing in from every direction, the psychological battle for Dacca began. And it all led to one of the most remarkable surrender negotiations you'll find in modern military history.
For General Niazi, the guy who had promised to change the bastard nation, well, the game was up. He was trapped in Dacca, Indian forces were at the gates, the local population was rising up against him. He knew his position was totally hopeless. His only real option was to try and negotiate some kind of way out.
And who do you think the Indian command sends into the lion's den to handle this? General Jacob. He flies into a city still held by tens of thousands of enemy soldiers, completely unarmed, with just a single staff officer by his side, to demand their unconditional surrender. I mean, the sheer nerve of it is just incredible.
And it worked. At the Dacca racecourse, General Niazi signed the instrument of surrender. 93,000 Pakistani soldiers laid down their weapons. It was the largest surrender of an army since the Second World War. The 13-day war was over, and Bangladesh was free.
But a victory in war is never really the end of the story, is it? The celebrations fade, the parades end, but the echoes of the conflict, they stick around. You find them in these amazing stories of honor, quiet sacrifice, and sometimes tragic forgetting. Just take a look at this letter. It was written after the war by an Indian colonel, Iqbar Singh, to the son of a Pakistani officer he had fought and killed. He wrote, "I think that every soldier who has been a witness to the martyrdom of another soldier has a duty to the family of the fallen warrior to intimate to them the circumstances of his demise." Wow, even after such a brutal war, this incredible act of shared humanity, this warrior code, just shines right through.
And of course, we have to remember the heroes, men like Lance Naik Albert Eka. He was from the Oran people, a tribe known as the Falcons, and he absolutely fought like one. In this one ferocious battle, he single-handedly stormed enemy bunkers, bayoneting soldiers and silencing machine guns, saving his whole company but losing his own life. His sacrifice is just this powerful testament to the incredible courage of the common soldier.
And then there are the stories that almost get lost completely. In a graveyard in Shillong, India, lie 52 Bangladeshi freedom fighters. They were wounded in battle, brought to India for treatment, but they died from their injuries. And for 4 decades, their graves were unmarked. Their sacrifice was totally unknown to the country they died to create. They were simply the forgotten.
And it leaves you with this fundamental question, doesn't it? We write books about generals and battles. We celebrate the dates of victory. But the true story of any conflict lives in the quiet compassion of a woman like Roshan Sangma, the defiant courage of a student like Omar Farouk, and the lonely graves of forgotten soldiers. History records the outcome, sure, but it is our memory that has to hold on to the truth.